So during this demonstration, we're going to walk through the new discovery mechanism within Test Data Manager 4.4. This functionality allows you to scan multiple data sources and identify where you may have personal data that needs to be protected or masked. This is key with more and more regulations coming around the way that data is protected. Now, the actual flow of how this works is shown here, and we start with our test data engineer. And our test data engineer will configure the scan, so identify the database to be scanned, initiate the scan job, review the scan results, and from that review they can identify where PII data is and know where there may be false positives. That is then passed on to internal data controllers for review and sign off, and the final report can then be passed to the auditors to confirm exactly where this data is. Now we're going to show this in a demonstration. So we're now looking at the TDM portal, and I've logged in as a user who has the rights to do profiling. So on the left-hand side, we can see our profiling tab. Now these are the steps required to do profiling. So the first step is the setup of the job. So when we click on here, what we can see here are these are the data sources that have been defined for the user we're looking at. So you can see we have various databases, and we're going to go with this one here, this online store. And on the right hand side, what we have is what are called classification packs. So these are the ones we ship out of the box. However, you can create your own classification packs. And this is the content you want to search for as we go through our discovery. So we're going to scan with everything, and we click next. You then get a screen where you can either schedule this for some time in the future or run the job directly. At the top of the screen is confirming which profile you're going to scan against and which classification packs you're going to use. We're going to run this job immediately. So we just clicked run, and this is the job here. Now if I refresh this job, what you'll see is that job has just started. And if I click on it on the right hand side, we'll see the number of tables we're scanning and the number of columns we're scanning. Now this job takes a few seconds. As you can see, it's just finished. And it changes state now from running to ready for review. And at this point, I can go and review that scan that we just ran. Now we ran it against a very small number of tables. And as you can see, here's the output of that scan. And what you can see on the screen here are the colors based on where we found PII data. So the green means there's very low risk of there being PII data in these tables. The yellow and the orange, low and medium risk, and then you get to the reds, very high risk. If I click on one of these objects, what you will see is in this particular table, the employee table, we've identified birth date, country, email, given name, phone number, surname. If we look at this table, we've identified things like postcodes. And for the other tables, you can see we have less data, less risk. And in the green, there we've identified no data in these tables. Now at this point, the actual profiler will click on the table and go into the investigation. And when we say investigation, what we're looking for is to confirm that what we've discovered is correct, and it is PI data. So we can see here, we have a column called last name. We think there's a surname in there. If you mouse over it, we get an example of the data we found, and we can confirm their surnames. Same with the first names. Again, we've identified these are given names, and we found a given name in there. Now we can actually click on this button here to get a random sample of data. So we can confirm exactly what was in that table. So again, it helps us identify if this data is PII or not. Now maybe we've actually identified things which are incorrect. So if you look here in the city field, we've identified as a town, but also identified a surname. So obviously cities sometimes may match surnames. And as the profiler, I can confirm that that's incorrect. I can remove that tag and just enter a description saying name is a city. So we can ignore that, and that removes that tag. And we can go for that for all the data. We can now walk through. So instead of going through every single table and every single column trying to identify data, we've limited this down to exactly where we need to identify our resources. Again, we've got phone numbers here. At the bottom, we've identified email addresses. Now in the email address field, you can see we've also identified given names because there's a name in that same field. And again, we can remove that because we know the main identifier is email address. Now what will happen is we will now walk through each table and confirm where there's data, where that data is correct, and any issues. Once we're finished, we can confirm and say we've checked this table. and we'll move on. And we'll step through each table. And if I just go through each table now, we can identify the tables that we're confirming. And also where there's no PII, we can also confirm that there's no issues here. So you can see here we're actually confirming that these tables are free of PII, things we may have missed through the automatic scan. Now at the end of that, as you can just see, we've now marked each table as being complete. We've validated that the scan is correct, and we believe it is correct. We can now create a report of this. And if we click the download button, we can now review that report. So this will create a PDF, and we can then open that PDF. And basically all the data we've just ran is in this report. So you can see what classifiers were run, we can see the heat map, and then we can see the details on the columns. We can see where we entered our descriptor. We may have removed a tag. We've got a descriptor that explains that. And at this point, the profiler can actually then pass this on for approval. So once we've done our work, we can submit this report for approval. So we're going to submit this report for sign off. It's now moved into the approval queue. And if I mouse over this, what we'll see is it actually needs 3 approvers to approve it. Now the one below it, you can see it's already had 1 approver sign it off and waiting for 2 other people to approve it. Now the table we just looked at was a very simple table. If we go back to here and look at a more complex table, you can see here we have 393 tables. This shows a much more complex table. Now when you're working with these tables, you can actually use the filters over here. So we can say we want to remove all the very low risk. Maybe we want to move the medium risk as well. So we can then focus in on the individual tables we want to work with. So you can see here, again, you can mouse over to see the tables. We can go into these. We can actually remove where we've said confirmed. Perhaps we're going to rework that. We can then mark it as confirmed again. So we can work with the table through these filters to identify exactly what tables have got data in, and then to mark them accordingly. Now at this point, we've taken that report and passed it on for approval. So what we're going to do is log off as this user and log back in as the approver. So I have a different user account who is our approver. Now that user would have received an email to say that he is a pending job in the sign-off queue. And when this user logs in, you'll see the screen is slightly different. So in the data profiling screen, as an approver, I don't get to see the job creation. I don't get to see the previous jobs. All I can see is any jobs that are pending my sign-off, as you can see here. So you can see that job there is pending my sign-off. I can then click on that. I can now review that report. So as before with the TDE, I can open the report as the approver. I can then review exactly what's been scanned. So what server, what database, exactly the results that were found, the tables and where I've identified PII. If I'm happy with this report, I can then go and sign it off. So I now as the approver can go and sign this report. I can then put my comment to say report reviewed. And as you can see now, I've now signed these off. There's nothing else for me to do. I can still drill into them to review the reports, but I've already signed these reports off. And as I said before, you can now see that these reports are now pending 2 more approvers before they then get completely signed off. Once the reports are signed off, they'll move into the report status. And at this point, they can then be used by the wider organization to review. And we actually have these 3 reports. So we have the executive summary that shows a very high level overview of the PII discovery, a job summary, and the audit report. So if I click on the executive summary, as you can see here, we have a very simple overview of when the report was ran, what data sources we were scanned against, the heat map that shows how much data we identified, and then the details as to what tables were scanned and what data was found in each table. That's the end of the demonstration. Thank you for your time.